I'd like to call the Mentor City Council regular meeting of Tuesday, December 5th, 2017 to order. The invocation will be given this evening by Councilman Kirschner.
Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for this day. Help us to use good judgment for the business at hand and guide us in wisdom with a continuing sense of truth and fairness for the community we represent.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Julie, please call the roll.
Mr. Kirchner?
Here.
Mr. Krieger?
Here.
Mr. Landig?
Here.
Mr. Marne?
Here.
Mr. Blake?
Here.
Mr. Donovan?
Here.
Mrs. Dowling?
Here. Council's in receipt of the minutes of the work session of November 21st, 2017.
Move to approve?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes. And the regular meeting of November 21st,
Move to approve.
2017.
Second?
Please call the roll.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes. Okay, public hearings. This evening, we have a public hearing for ordinance number 17-0-129, and this public hearing is being held pursuant to notice duly published and posted according to law. Julie, please read the legislation.
An ordinance approving an application by the Mall at Great Lakes LLC to designate 97.23 plus acres of land at and around 7850 Menor Avenue as a community entertainment district.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll make a couple of comments on this early. Or, Mr. Traub, did you want to introduce this at the lectern, or are we okay here?
I'm fine sitting here. There's an expectation when I get up to the lectern that I have
Okay, well, we have no visual aids, so why don't we just get started here? Let me make a few opening comments. We're joined today by Matt Jerkowitz, who is representing Washington Prime, who is the primary property owner related to this application. The application, as the ordinance notes, designates just over 97 acres of land in and around 7850 Menor Avenue as a community entertainment district. We know this property as the Great Lakes Mall property, although it does include those anchor stores that are independently owned associated with Washington Prime, as well as the Atlas Cinemas. Essentially, this would provide 15 liquor licenses based on the number of acres here, which is the maximum that would be allowable within a community, within an entertainment district, community entertainment district in Ohio. Those licenses would be issued to and remain within that district. The positive, on a much even perhaps more positive note, not only is it a demonstration of the intent of those property owners to further look to provide reinvestment in the area, but this carries with it the obligation over a 10-year period to provide for at least a minimum $50 million investment within that district. So this, under the revised code, it does come with the requirement that the chief executive officer of the municipal corporation, in our case, provide council with a recommendation one way or the other. I am recommending to City Council that we approve this. I think that we feel as though this is in the best interest of that redevelopment. Mr. Traub?
Mr. Filipiak provided a very comprehensive review of the situation. I would just remind council that there is a staff report that reviews some of the technical aspects from excerpts, if you will, from the Ohio Revised Code, and then the Ohio Revised Code in turn makes reference to planning documents that would support such an investment, and the comprehensive plan in its entirety is included as an exhibit for your review. If there are any questions, either now or during further discussion of the legislation, both myself, Mr. Filipiak, and Mr. Zampedro are well-versed in this up-and-coming economic development technique tool. Thank you.
Gentlemen, would the applicant like to come forward and say a few words? Please identify yourself for the clerk.
Yes, my name is Matt Jerkowitz, Washington Prime Group. I'm Director of Development for Great Lakes Mall. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you guys for considering the application here. The Community Entertainment District designation for us is going to unlock real value, make us more, I guess, more capable of delivering some of the projects that we would like to be able to tackle in the near term. Actually, we've got an ongoing initiative, as you guys know, the Dillard's box, which Dillard's had indicated they intended to vacate. We were able to then acquire the box, and we're in the process right now of redeveloping that. We're bringing Round One, which for those who aren't familiar, I know they're not in the market yet, is a very, very high quality, family-oriented event, bowling, karaoke, and other amenities operation that's coming into the market. 50,000 square feet, 2 full-service restaurants, and we still actually have 60,000 square feet on the upper level of the box that's unused, unspoken for, that we expect in the future to be able to put to good tax-paying, producing use. So. Not only a project that we have today, but also going forward. The Seritage-owned parcel, which is home to the former, I guess now vacant Sears box. Seritage is actively engaged in an effort to try and look at redevelopment opportunities for that site. I just want to let you know that this is the type of thing that is making their eyes broaden and their vista broaden to see what's really possible given the tight nature of liquor permits in markets. So this is a tremendous tool, and on behalf of WPG and all the property owners within the CED, again, I want to thank you for even considering the application.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone that wishes to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Hearing none, the council is in receipt of all correspondence received pertaining to this matter, and this public hearing is adjourned. New legislation, ordinance number 17-0-129.
An ordinance approving an application by the Mall at Great Lakes LLC to designate 97.23 plus acres of land at and around 7850 Menor Avenue as a community entertainment district.
Mr. Philippak, any additional comment?
Nothing additional.
Gentlemen?
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Just
Mr.
one
Blake.
question. We were talking about this briefly before. This will not change the zoning. It's currently B2 zoning. And my understanding, this is sort of like an overlay to that area to establish a special district. So I think this is fantastic, and I look forward to seeing what comes next.
Madam President?
Mr. Kirschner? Yes.
Just to respond, that's correct, Councilman Blake. I mean, it's much like it is a special improvement district. It has a specific purpose. We've talked about that purpose at the public hearing, and council has looked at this very carefully in its work session, but it will not impact in any way the zoning designation or any of the permitted uses within that zoning designation.
All right, thank you.
I will move to suspend the rule.
Second?
Please call the roll.
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second?
Please call the roll.
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Krieger. Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes. Ordinance number 17-0-129 has been approved. Ordinance number 17-0-130.
An ordinance providing for appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Menor, Ohio for the period beginning January 1st, 2018 to and including December 31st, 2018, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Madam President, and such a short description, but this is our spending plan for 2018. This is our annual budget, and we're very happy to have been able to work so closely and cooperatively with City Council in formulating this for our next fiscal year. Again, on behalf of the entire administration, we're always very appreciative of council. I know that this compresses our schedule and makes us all quite busy at the end of the year, but the benefits of adopting this budget before the end of this calendar year, again, gives our entire administration and each department an opportunity to have a full calendar year to implement our plans and projects for the year, and that has proven very successful, I think, for the community since we've been able to move forward with this type of schedule in the past. So I will turn this over to Mr. Malinowski shortly. This is, and we're happy to answer any specific questions that might still remain. Mr. Malinowski?
Thank you, Mr. Filipiak. As you know, this is the culmination of several budget work sessions. It comprises the entire calendar year 2018 appropriations and consists of the general fund totaling $65.3 million roughly appropriations and over 50 other funds of the city. And I recommend approval. Thank you.
Gentlemen,
Move to suspend.
Second.
please call the roll.
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes,
Move to approve.
Second.
please call the roll.
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes, ordinance number 17-0-130 has been approved. Ordinance number 17-0-131.
An ordinance to authorize transfers of funds, advances of funds, and revisions to appropriations and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Malinowski, please.
Thank you, Mr. Filipiak, and I just noticed the terminology here authorizes transfers of funds, advances and revisions. I don't see any transfers on this ordinance, so we're looking at advances of funds and revisions to appropriations. And as highlighted in the staff report, we have 4 advances, temporary in nature, that'll be returned back to the various funds, and several appropriation revisions to the current 2017 budget, and I would recommend approval. Thank you.
Gentlemen,
Move to suspend.
Second.
please call the roll.
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes,
To approve.
Second.
please call the roll.
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes, ordinance number 17-0-131 has been approved. Resolution number 17-R-129.
A resolution declaring the necessity of preparing estimated assessments for the construction of certain sidewalks in Zone 2C associated with the 2016 pedestrian safety program of the City of Mentor, ratifying and confirming publications and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Swigger, please.
Thank you, Mr. Filipiak. City sidewalk contractor A&J Cement Contractors Incorporated has recently completed repairs to the sidewalks in Zone 2C, and that is the zone bounded by Mentor Avenue, Garfield Road, I-90, and Westmore Road. 1,354 slabs of concrete sidewalk were replaced through the assessment process on 283 properties. These are sidewalk slabs not previously repaired by property owners. These parcels represent about 64% of all the parcels cited for sidewalk violations. A typical 5-foot by 5-foot, 4-inch thick concrete slab ran about $162.50 to replace. An additional cost of approximately $13.24 per property for administrative costs is also included with the assessment cost for the property owners. Total cost for construction of the assessed portion of the sidewalk replacement work came to $224,413.05. This legislation is a resolution per the Ohio Revised Code declaring the necessity of preparing estimated assessments for the construction of sidewalks over parcels as shown on Exhibit A. Upon council approval of this resolution, a notice will be published in the News Herald twice and then for 20 consecutive days on their public notice website as required by the Ohio Revised Code, stating that the list of assessments is on file in the office of the city engineer for inspection by the public. Property owners will have 2 weeks after the notice of publication ends to file objections to the cost of the assessments in writing to the clerk of council for review. Once objections to the cost of assessments have been resolved and final assessments have been prepared, a final ordinance of assessment will be presented to council for approval. Thank you.
Gentlemen,
Move to suspend.
Second.
please call the roll.
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes,
Move to approve.
Second.
please call the roll.
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes. Resolution number 17-R-129 has been adopted. Resolution 17-R-130.
A resolution in support of creating a railroad quiet zone within the city of Mentor along with the CSX and Norfolk and Southern Railroad at grade crossings on Plaza Boulevard and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Madam President. And as the council knows, Mr. Zampedro has been spending some time this last year becoming an expert in quiet zones in the process, and I'm going to ask him in a minute to go through that process. But I think the benefit of the investment that we're making right now at the new intersection at the extension of Plaza Boulevard with the 2 new at-grade crossings allow us the opportunity, because they have been upgraded with the best available technology, to proceed with the first designation of a quiet zone in the community. Mr. Zampedro?
Thank you, Mr. Filipiak. As the city manager noted, and council's aware, we've planned for, designed, engineered, replanned, redesigned, re-engineered Plaza. It is based on the regulations with the Federal Railway Administration. The engineering design does meet all the supplemental safety measure specifications in order for us to be able to declare this a quiet zone. So the first step is for council to grant the authority to establish that quiet zone. Normally after that, the railroads will take time with the diagnostic team to decide what is actually out there in a normal case. Here, this is all brand new, all built out, so no real reason to have to diagnose anything, as well as design or engineer anything further. So once council passes this legislation at the Plaza Boulevard crossings, the administration will issue a notice of intent to create the quiet zone. The railroads, along with the Ohio Rail Commission, the Federal Railway Administration, will have upwards of 60 days to provide comment. Following that, and assuming everything is in order, we would then be able to issue an establishment of the quiet zone, complete with road signs that indicate such. A 21-day waiting period there is necessary, and then the quiet zone takes effect. So conservatively, I think there may be a 3 to 4 month period where once the crossing opens, the train whistles and horns may sound for a while. That will be an addition to the community that isn't used to it in terms of those residential subdivisions that are in proximity. But it's my hope that we would get that additional community noise removed fairly quickly here. So this will be the first one in Lake County. Does set the stage for discussion maybe for future quiet zones in the city.
I think
Comment?
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. Martin.
Oh, great job, Tony. I know you've been working on it for over a year, and I'm glad we're able to get this done when we're ready to cross over the tracks here in about the next month or so.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
It'll be great. Thank you very much for everything you did.
Madam
Mr. Blake.
President. Yes, thank you, Tony, for your research into quiet zones. One thing I'd kind of like to key in on is the quiet zone that we're establishing actually makes that crossing safer for cars. And even though, people in the community will not hear those horns, the upgrades to that crossing keep them from being able to go around the gates and into the path of an oncoming train. So it's obligatory for me to ask about the other 5 crossings. We've got 2 on Hopkins, the CSX, and
Station and Hart.
yeah, Station and Hart, right?
Maple.
I mean,
Patterson.
Patterson, yeah, we've got 5. We've got 5. Is that something in the future that we can start looking to possibly maybe do 1 crossing at a time?
I can give you where we're at so far, because as you're aware, Councilman, the Summers Group did provide us with I'll call seed money to look at really what is part of the diagnostic process with the railroads, where they go in and they decide what exactly their circuitry and their infrastructure looks like and what it would need to be upgraded, again, depending upon what the city was trying to do in terms of developing the quiet zone in that area. And to that end, initially, we did get some numbers from the railroad that were somewhat disheartening. On the low end, the railroad's best estimate at N&S was $44,500 for their work alone at the Hopkins Road crossing, which is the low one. But after that, you go to Patterson, it's a $215,000 ask, a $305,000 at Hart, a $270,000 at Maple, and a $255,000 at Station, and that's just NNS. Now, in further discussions with NNS, we were able to pare that down somewhat, because as council's aware of, we're not proposing a 4-quad gate system, which will cost in excess of $500,000 to $700,000 for that system alone at each crossing. We're talking about, much like we did at Plaza, raised median in the center, as well as upgrading the, with delineators on top, as well as obligated to upgrade the railroad circuitry. So part of the problem we ran into at NNS was much of their infrastructure is grandfathered in as being too close to the traveled portion on the roadway. So their estimates were based on essentially putting all new infrastructure in as if we were doing it anew again. So in further discussion with them, in 4 of those crossings, with the exception of Maple, we were able to get those numbers down considerably. I mean, they're still, you know, we're still at Hopkins with the city's work included in that, 53,000, Patterson 73,000, Station 83,000, Hart 83,000. But Maple Street is built too close to the road. It's very tight. That would require that infrastructure to be removed and replaced. So we're looking at about $250,000 there. And also CSX does not have the circuitry in place that NNS does. They'd require a significant overhaul of their constant warning time or the lack thereof there. That's another and that's essentially a new emplacement. That would be $250,000 for that crossing as well. So you do get into still some pretty big numbers with this process.
Is there any transportation funding available for projects like this, or is this something that
Not any direct funding that we're aware of, although Hamburg, New York did receive from the state of New York $500,000 some years ago, not too long ago, because they just did 5 crossings, much the same way we wanted to do, I believe, on the same sets of tracks that we're looking at here. And their cost per crossing came in at a little over $100,000 a crossing. So most of that was funded through a state grant that the state of New York was able to come up with for them. So that allowed them to do that.
So is this something that, if council were to agree on this, that we could sort of plan for and have as shovel-ready if the funding does come available through a stimulus that, who knows, in the future might come about, that we could just kind of have sitting and ready to go if funding were to become available?
Well,
Or
I think the issue is funding. I mean, for the most part, we've analyzed it. I think, but for the funding, we would be able to go forward.
We'd be ready to go. We wouldn't have to invest any more money into the study. We'd be ready to go if funding were to show up.
Generally, and again, remember, we're dealing with the railroad, so I've learned there's no absolute there. There may be additional, again, once the diagnostics is done, then it comes up to the design. So they're heavily involved in the design of their system. I'm remiss in not recognizing Alan Pennington and Dave Swerger. Their office has done a lot of this work. Alan has been very good, has established some very good communication channels with both railroads. So I'm certainly happy to take the credit, but it's been a good team effort in terms of getting this information to council.
I have a feeling that the railroads really probably aren't really too interested in us doing this, but, mitigating those horns, which now that the leaves are not on the trees, I mean, I can hear from my bedroom on King Memorial, and I can imagine as you get closer to those crossings, although people do get used to it, but it's like having somebody that nags you all the time. Would you like to have them stop? Sure. So I got a feeling that if we were to be able at some point in the future to eliminate those horns, that would be a plus for the community. Thank you.
Gentlemen,
Move to suspend.
Second.
please call the roll.
Mr. Kirchner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
Mr. Landig.
Yes.
Mr. Marne.
Yes.
Mr. Blake.
Yes.
Mr. Donovan.
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling.
Yes.
Move to approve.
Please call the roll.
Old railroad days, huh?
Yeah.
Mr. Kirchner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
Mr. Landig.
Yes.
Mr. Marne.
Yes.
Mr. Blake.
Yes.
Mr. Donovan.
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling.
Yes. Resolution number 17-R-130 has been adopted. Second readings, we have none. Third readings. Ordinance number 17-O-117.
An ordinance amending Part 13, Title 5, Chapter 1349 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Mentor, 2006, as amended, the same relating to definitions and maintenance of premises.
Mr. Flippia?
Thank you, Madam President, and, as our third reading, I think it's worth mentioning one more time that the administration is supportive of this. We believe it's helpful and for giving us some additional tools to be able to maintain the community standards that I think our residents expect.
Gentlemen? Mr. Landig.
Thank you, Madam President. And on the administration's note, I did receive an email from Andy Rose, Administrative Services, just describing his philosophy and policy relative to enforcement, because there was some concern relative to the public of fear, denial of property rights, maybe even persecution. And I think the law director also did a fine job of illustrating the types of situations which are uncommon, maybe even rare, where it is about those minority of situations where the gross exterior messiness of some residents infringes on the those that would say, I should not have to look at this. And with the judgment of the city code enforcement, I think that this is going to be a helpful ordinance. Thank you.
Gentlemen?
Move to approve.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Kirchner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
Mr. Landig.
Yes.
Mr. Marne.
Yes.
Mr. Blake.
Yes.
Mr. Donovan.
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling.
Yes. Oh, it's third reading. Ordinance number 17-O-117 has been approved. Manager's report.
Thank you, Madam President, members of council. On January 18th, the city will be hosting the first Mentor Small Business Symposium at the Mentor School's Paradigm Center. Industry experts will show you what you need to know to start your small business with success. And best of all, it's free. We are partnering with the Mentor Economic Assistance Corporation, NMS Accounting Services, Erie Bank, Global Real Estate Partners, and our own planning department. So reserve your seat at mentormeansbusiness.com. The Mentor Fire Department will be hosting their 23rd annual Rescue the Needy food drive at the parking lot near Max and Irma's on Friday, December 15th from 4 to 9 p.m. and on Saturday, December 16th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Representatives from the fire department will be collecting non-perishable food items for families in need within our community. Next week is the last week for yard waste collection for 2017. The program will start again with the first full week of April 2018, but Christmas trees can be dropped off at our city parks through the end of January. The 23rd Annual Protect and Serve Tavern will take place on Saturday, December 9th from noon to 4 p.m. at the Great Lakes Mall. This free event is hosted by the Lake County Crime Prevention Task Force, the Lake County Chiefs of Police Association, and the Lake County Safe Communities Coalition. Local police chiefs will act as bartenders, serving non-alcoholic drinks and snacks to shoppers to remind everyone to make safe choices and to drive sober this holiday season. Local police departments will invite shoppers to try the Fatal Vision goggles, which mimic alcohol impairment. I think Chief Knight has a special drink mix worked up this year, so looking forward to that. As temperatures begin to drop, the fire department wants everybody to heat their homes safely. I would like to remind our residents that space heaters need space. Keep anything that can burn at least 3 feet away from heating equipment like the furnace, fireplace, wood stove, or portable space heaters, and always follow the manufacturer's and UL guidelines whenever using supplemental heating devices. Remember as well that candles are an open flame that can easily ignite and should not be left unattended. JTO Incorporated is starting sanitary sewer lateral reconstruction work this week on Marigold Road. Access will be maintained for residents throughout the project, although road closures will occur at the actual location of the lateral replacement. Currently, Dominion is relocating gas service connections in advance of that work. Santa's Wild Workshop will be on Wednesday, December 6th, and on Friday, December 8th, from 6 to 8 p.m. at Wildwood. Make a toy in Santa's Workshop, decorate cookies with Mrs. Claus, take a train ride to see the Christmas lights, and visit with Old St. Nick. Call 440-974-5735 to register for that. And Lunch with Santa will take place on Saturday, December 9th from 12 to 3 p.m. at the Mentor Civic Arena. You can call 440-974-5730 to register for that event. Wildwood will host its free holiday open house on Tuesday, December 12th from 1 to 3 p.m. We encourage all residents to stop in and enjoy some free hot chocolate and freshly baked cookies as you tour the beautifully decorated Wildwood Manor House and check out the model train display in the basement. And then finally, we want to welcome one new business to our community, Patriot Car Wash at 7380 Menor Avenue. We wish them great success and thank them for their investment. And then finally, on behalf of the administration and all of our full and part-time employees at the city, we want to wish our residents a Merry Christmas and safe and Happy New Year. That's all.
Thank you. Clerk's correspondence.
Council is in receipt of a new C2 liquor permit request for Roush Ashba Enterprises LLC, DBA East Stop Mini Mart.
Council's in receipt of the meeting minutes of the Municipal Planning Commission of October 19th, 2017, and the Tree Commission, November 8th, 2017. Old business? Hearing none. New business.
Madam President, in keeping of the spirit of Christmas and being that this is our last meeting, we have a couple of housekeeping items to take care of. So I would move to reschedule the 7:30 p.m. January 2, 2018 meeting to 7:30 p.m. January 9th, 2018 to accommodate the charter requirement of holding the organizational meeting the first Tuesday after January 3rd.
I'll second it. Exactly what he said.
Yeah, what do you say? Please call the roll.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
And secondly, we have moved to cancel the January 16, 2018 meeting in order to avoid two meetings 1 week apart, keeping in mind that we may want to mention that council has the option of scheduling another meeting should it become necessary in January.
Second?
Please call the roll.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes. Okay, under new business, we also, the city is accepting resumes and applications for some volunteer positions. We have 3 4-year terms on the Board of Building and Zoning Appeals ending 12/31/2021, 4 4-year terms on the Municipal Planning Commission ending 12/31/2021, 2 4-year terms on the Civil Service Commission ending 12/31/2021, 2 3-year terms on the Community Arts Commission ending 12/31/2020, 1 3-year term on the Fair Housing Board ending 12/31/2020, 2 2-year terms on the Income Tax Board of Review ending 12/31/2019, and 1 4-year term on the Tree Commission ending 12/31/2021. Any residents that are seeking appointment to the position must submit an application and resume to the Clerk of Council. The deadline for submission is 5 p.m. December 15th, 2017. For more information and to obtain an application, please contact our clerk, Schiavone at cityofmentor.com, or call 440-974-5700. Any other new business, gentlemen? We have no persons before council this evening.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
So moved.